Hello and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech video. Myself, Amata, but as always I'm here with the latest news from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours. Today we're going to start things off with a bit of a Debbie Downer piece from Nvidia. So essentially what we have is a security bulletin from the company for November 2019, which of course will be linked in the description below this video. But what it actually outlines is 9 weaknesses of varying degrees of severity in the Nvidia drivers. The most severe is not to be messed with at 7.8. But you've got 2 at 7.8, 1 at 7.1, you've got a few clocking in at 6.5, and then the lowest end is 5.1, 5.3, and then 5.5. But essentially what the company are saying here is that if you are running a GeForce graphics card and can update, do so immediately, as they have actually issued an update for 1.12. So it's up to but not including the latest update. So again, nothing to panic about, you just need to update your drivers, and I would advise that you do so pretty much as soon as you finish listening to this video, as the issues may lead to denial of service, escalation of privileges, or information disclosure. So yeah, rest assured, before I even recorded this topic, I have updated my drivers. But if you want more information, you can find the link to their report, as I've already said, in the description below this video. So let's move on to some better news from Nvidia regarding Ampere. So of course, we are eagerly awaiting what Nvidia are going to do next. Turing has been a bit of a mixed bag for Nvidia. Obviously it has sold pretty well, but obviously they've come with a lot of fire for the pricing strategy, and I've said numerous times that I feel like the architecture and the generation as a whole would have been received better if they had started out with the super cards. The level of price versus performance per dollar there is much better than the vanilla Turing release. While the super cards aren't exactly cheap, you're still getting better value for your money. But obviously we know a lot about what AMD have already released and what they are going to be releasing in the future, as well as reports about Big Navi and so on and so forth. But of course there's a huge question mark over Ampere. And according to a rumour which was posted by TechRadar.com, we could see the RTX 3080, if that is ends up being what it's called, at Computex 2020 in June. So this would apparently follow a launch of the new 7nm Ampere architecture in March, which is roughly when Nvidia will have their GTC event, their GPU Technology Conference. So according to Chris Caso of Raymond James, Nvidia has actually delayed the launch of Ampere because of Turing. So obviously Turing is still doing really well. It still feels pretty fresh, to be honest. It's only really showing its weaknesses in that ray tracing, while it's, this architecture is kind of really pushing ray tracing. Even the 2080 Ti high resolution struggles with ray tracing. And obviously there's other niggles, price, etc. I've already gone over. There's a lot wrong with it that I'm not going to go into in this video because it's kind of outside the remit of the topic. But regardless of all that, Turing is doing pretty well sales-wise, still feels pretty fresh, and is still performing pretty well, is basically what I was trying to get at previously. So the rumour does not stop there, as they also suggest that the very first Ampere card could be something that's more targeted towards data centres. And they also suggest that Nvidia are going to do pretty much what they did with the Turing generation, in that they're going to release the high-end GPUs like the 3080 and 3070 first, and then the mid-range, more affordable cards, and obviously the lower end coming out later on. Again, this is exactly what they did with Turing. The 2080 Ti came out first, 2070 much later, and of course it took some time before the lower end to be filled out. Now, unsurprisingly, there are a lot of hopes and speculation as to what Nvidia are working on in terms of the specs and improvements on Ampere. Now, I would expect ray tracing to still be a flag that they're flying very high here, but it is undoubtedly going to come with improved performance on that ray tracing, as well as obviously higher clock speeds and lower TDPs, and hopefully, fingers crossed, a better managed price versus performance ratio. Now, obviously, the top-end card is still going to be a pretty penny. I don't think anyone's denying that or saying that's not going to happen because, well, that would just be silly. It's obviously going to be expensive. I just hope that it's a bit more on the end of the super line of Turing cards versus what Turing came out at initially. So, I'm really interested to see what Nvidia have in store for Ampere. Unfortunately, that's all the information the rumours have. Anything more is just going to be speculation, and I've already speculated quite a bit. But this makes sense, to be honest, and also lines up with what we've heard here as well for our own sources, so I'll not be shocked at all to see these rumours come to fruition. So let's move on, shall we, to some very exciting news from Seagate. So essentially what we have here is the company have released a roadmap for the year of 2020, and well, as you can plainly see on screen, they are planning to have a 50 terabyte HDD by the year 2026 and 20 terabyte HDD in the year 2020. And a statement from Seagate CEO Dr. Dave Mosley said in a earnings call, quote, "Today Seagate is the only company mass producing 16 terabyte drives, which is the capacity benchmark for the industry. We are preparing to ship 18 terabyte drives in the first half of calendar year 2020 to maintain our industry capacity leadership." So basically, yep, they're pretty satisfied with where they are now, but they're not stopping there, not keen to give up that throne of having that capacity. And 50 terabytes by 2026, that's definitely ambitious, and 20 terabytes by 2020, given that it's literally next year, definitely has me interested. Of course, not a huge leap if they're preparing to have 18 terabytes shipping in the first half of the year, not that big of a leap to go from that to 20, of course. But the climb up to 50 is definitely going to be an interesting one to watch. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that the 20 terabyte drive that's coming on later next year is actually going to be using a different strategy when it comes to how it's produced. It's going to be using shingled magnetic recording, or SMR technology, which basically enables them to make larger and larger drives as each data strip on the disk is shingled, which basically results in random access speed is going to be slower than a conventional drive. But if you're willing to take that hit in terms of speed of access, the increase in capacity could be worth it, but let's wait and see what happens, and of course let's wait and see what happens from their competitors as well. So let's move on, shall we, to VR. Now, I've discussed many times that while virtual reality has yet to set the world on fire, I do believe it has the potential to be like the next big thing. There are several hurdles that need to be jumped over: price, accessibility, and obviously the space requirements as well. And John Carmack, who of course is the Oculus VR CTO, was actually given a Lifetime Achievement Award today at the 3rd Annual VR Awards. So during his acceptance speech of this particular award, he actually discussed how he's not happy with the progress they've been making with VR itself. But let's hear what he had to say himself. He said, quote, "I'm often kind of grumpy around the office because we haven't really been satisfied with the pace of progress that we've been making. When I'm in VR, I see the magic there. But my brain is always throwing up this giant to-do post-it notes on top of everything, reminding me of all the work that's yet to be done. So it's going to be a little while before I feel really good about reminiscing about my achievements." And to be honest, he's right. You know, VR, it's impressive. It's very cool. PSVR is definitely the best if you wear glasses from the ones I've tried. The others just kind of press the glasses against your face in a weird way, and unfortunately, my eyes are not good enough to play VR without them. So there are definitely a lot of things that they need to work on that I've already discussed. I've discussed numerous times. I'm not going to go over them again. So I definitely agree with John that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I just do feel that potential is still there, and he obviously feels the same way. He even said, quote, "All that technology really doesn't mean much until it's brought in service of user value. So more than anything, I hope that I've been helpful in bringing the new canvas for people to work on, and that the work that people do will be paving the way in the future." So it seems that, yes, he's continuing his work for now, but he's kind of saying that it's kind of down to the developers of the future to really get VR to the point where it's going to be a mass market thing, where it can be enjoyed by as many people as possible. So what do you think, guys? How long do you think it's going to be before we see VR really become a thing? Do you even think it's going to become a big thing? Or is it just going to be too niche, too expensive, even when we get the process for developing these things down? Let me know your thoughts. But let's finish up today's proceedings with a bit of news regarding the PlayStation 5. So obviously we're all very interested and excited to see what both Sony and Microsoft are bringing to us with the next generation consoles. But there's been something we haven't mentioned for a long time. A handheld console from Sony. Now obviously the PS Vita did not do particularly well in the West. In Japan it's a different story of course, but it just didn't really ever take off here, unfortunately. But if according to a report from Let's Go Digital, we have a leak, which is a Brazilian patent office by the name of INPI. So basically what we have is a document has been filed with that particular company, and as you can plainly see on screen, it shows what looks like some sort of cartridge. Now, how big this would actually be in practice is probably not going to be as large as the image that's on the screen, but it still shows a cartridge with an indented space on the face, presumably for the label itself. So obviously Sony was massively burned by the PS Vita. It did not do well in the West, obviously again did very well in Japan, but they were hoping for wider spread appeal than that, obviously. You know, it's a good console, it just didn't have the game support, I feel like was the main issue. So, to be honest, I would have said that Sony would be kind of very hesitant to go near a handheld again, but maybe they've been enticed by the smell, that faraway scent of all that sweet, sweet Nintendo money, as they have been literally raking it in thanks to the success of the Nintendo Switch. So, you may recall that there were also rumours last year of a 5G PSP that were doing the rounds last year. So, would it be 5G? Potentially, but the question really is not the specifics of it, is it going to exist? And obviously this filing definitely raises an eyebrow, but that doesn't really confirm it. As I've said before, this could just be a patent filing and that's it. You know, companies patent things all the time and they'll never use them. It happens literally every day. So just because it exists in this manner does not mean we'll ever see a physical product, as I've said many times. I think if Sony were going to do it, they would do it now, because Nintendo is literally printing money with the Switch. Obviously their opponent is not going to be doing anything with handhelds. I don't know, reports are a bit mixed on that. But regardless, I think Sony knows that if they were going to do this again, they need to get it right. And they're probably going to be looking at the success of the Switch and obviously what Nintendo have been done previously and look at where they went wrong with the Vita. So I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this one. Would you buy a Sony handheld, or are you just not interested? You know, one handheld's enough for you, or you just don't handheld game. It's entirely possible. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, your support is highly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.